Hello and welcome to the Pleasurepreneur podcast. This podcast will help you create what you desire in your business with pleasure. Whether that be calling in your ideal clients, making more money, or creating a balanced business life blend. I'm your host, Regan Fig, pleasure and business coach, published author of A Mother's Pleasure, wife and mama to 3 little wildlings. However you're choosing to listen to this podcast, ask yourself, how can I make this more pleasurable? And do just that. I acknowledge the custodians of the land on which this podcast is recorded and produced, the Wadi Wadi people of Dharawal land. Now, let's proceed with pleasure. Hello and welcome to this Instagram live training / live podcast recording, my 2024 recap. The good and the bad in my business. Hello, Lisa. Thanks for joining me. I was going to just quickly record a podcast episode whilst my baby girl is at my mum's before I go and pick her up. And I started jotting down some notes. These are my very concise notes. Yeah, and I thought I'm going to bring it here into Instagram because I don't know about you, but I love hearing about other people, how they live their lives, how they operate their businesses, what's been working for them, what hasn't, what they have found is working. Hang on, I think I need to change my... do I need to change my microphone or am I just speaking too loud? I'm probably speaking too loud. All right, so I'm excited. You can see. So hello. My name is Regan. I work with women in business who want to create multiple 4-figure months in their business and beyond and do it in a way that feels good with pleasure, because why would you want to do it any other way? I don't know why you would do it any other way. Okay, so I'm going to start fixing my microphone here. Let's see. Okay. Oh, that looks better. That looks heaps better. Okay, so let's get started. Now, I would love it if you are here on the live, or if you are catching the replay, or if you're listening to the podcast and you have some reflections that you'd like to share with me. If you've got any questions that you would like to ask, bring them. I will answer your questions. If there's anything that you want me to clarify, let me know. Okay, so if I even just cast my mind back to the start of this year, it feels so long ago. And I realized in my business at the start of this year, if you were around at the start of this year, you might remember me declaring that my book was going to be on Reese Witherspoon's book club reading list. Do you remember? Hey, Innie. And so, yeah, at the start of this year, I was like, that is my goal. However, a few weeks into this year, I realized that there was something that I was ignoring, something that I really wanted that I was ignoring that was bigger than having my book on Reese Witherspoon's reading list, book club list, which would have been really cool. But ultimately, I had to be real with myself and just honor the fact that I really desired to work with women in business. So the last sort of 5 years or so, I've been helping mothers to experience more pleasure in motherhood, in their bodies, in their relationship. So yeah, for the last 5 years, have been helping mums to experience more pleasure in motherhood, in their bodies, in their relationships, in themselves, in just their day-to-day. And sometime last year, I really started to call in women who wanted to work with me in their business because they saw how I was growing my business and how I was having a good time with it. And they were like, can you show me how you do that? That looks fun. I want to grow my business in a way that feels good, that doesn't deplete me, that doesn't burn me out. And I'm looking to you and you look like you're having a good time. Can you help me? And I'm like, absolutely, sure. And so I started last year working with women in business, but it was more so around like blending motherhood and business. Yeah. So I knew that's where I wanted to take this. And yeah, I don't know if you remember, do you remember Synergy? It was my blending business and motherhood freebies. I did a few of those. Anyway, I finally this year really let myself honor my desires to work with women to help them grow their businesses, in particular to help them create multiple 4-figure months in their business, to become in-demand mentors and coaches in their expertise-based businesses, and to ensure that they did it with pleasure, without depletion, without burnout, and not just pleasure in their business, but also letting that flow into all parts of their life. Yeah. I think for me, the hardest part of the start of this year was letting myself trust that desire and letting myself have that. And almost like it felt like I was letting go of a big body of work of growing the community that I have grown when it comes to experiencing pleasure in motherhood. Like I wrote and published a book. I have an audio book on it, and that only came out at the start of this year as well. So yeah, I totally pivoted this year. And I think for some people, it felt like perhaps not a drastic pivot. But when we're talking about the good and bad in business, for me, something that wasn't so fun this year in business was what happens when you pivot in business. What can generally happen, which is chances are the audience, I'll speak for myself, my audience was used to getting value from me about experiencing pleasure in motherhood. And I'm now starting to talk about experiencing more pleasure in business to create the financial growth you want to be creating in your business. And yes, to create an income to support your family and to have time and energy and presence for your family and your children if you are a mother with a business. But ultimately, I pivoted. And I realized that with that came some not so fun times. So for me, that looks like my audience has not grown at all on Instagram. So I started with around 1,600 people, followers in my audience on Instagram at the start of the year, and I'm still there. And I think number one, that's amazing because that's already so many people. And number two, I could say I haven't grown my audience, but the fact is I have lost people. Some people have unfollowed and some people have started to follow. So that was also something that I moved through this year. I don't want to say mind drama because it didn't feel like mind drama, but it was something that it felt like those stats were slow to catch up. And that went for as well my mailing list, my stats on my mailing list, my stats on my podcast. Whilst over the year it has grown throughout that pivot, there were a lot of unsubscribes, a lot of new subscribes, and it comes with the territory. So it wasn't anything I was giving myself a hard time for, but it was probably a piece of the year that I was like, not the most fun. Oh, I actually got a little bit more time for my business this year. So I realized it had been at the start, I finished breastfeeding at the start of this year. Now, up until January this year, I had either been pregnant or breastfeeding or both for 9 years. 9 years. I continually breastfed through all of my pregnancies and babies. So that was about 8 years, plus then obviously the almost year of being pregnant together, but at the first babe. And yeah, so 9 years of either being pregnant or breastfeeding or both. And the start of this year, I was not pregnant and I finished breastfeeding. And so for me, I have gotten my energy back and I've also gotten a little bit more time back. My youngest, she's 3, almost 4. But this year was the first year that I had created enough money in my business that I could offer her a day a week to go to bush school. It's a 5-hour day. And also my mum would have her for a few hours on a Wednesday, which is where she is now. And so, yeah, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, I have grown my business in nap times. I've grown my business with the baby stuck to my boob. I've grown my business by doing the notes section on my phone while 2 children are falling asleep next to me. And so this year has felt a little bit more expansive in terms of time and definitely energy. I'm not falling asleep after lunch and I'm not falling asleep when I'm getting the kids to bed. So yeah, that's a win. But I just wanted to add some of that personal context in. Okay, so we talked about some of the bad, which is, I wouldn't even really call it bad, but there's got to be something that wasn't super fun, which is having pivoted and experiencing the lag effect of that. I've written here as well that I dropped my desire to have my book on Reese Witherspoon's book club, which I already mentioned. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing, but it felt there was some almost some grief there because written and published and poured my heart out into this book. And it's almost like I got it to this point where it started gaining traction. And I was like, I think this is as far as I'm taking this. And so there was definitely a little bit of grief there. Okay. Yes. And so then I think I've just said here, I lost what felt like a lot of followers. And I've already spoken about that. So that was pretty much as bad as it got for this year. I know that for some people, this year in their business has actually been like financially less rewarding than years before. For me, it was the opposite. So that's some of the stuff that went on for me that didn't feel so great in my business. I'm going to talk to you now about some of the good stuff that happened in my business. First of all, I have absolutely adored every single client I've gotten to work with this year, whether that's a one-on-one client I've worked with for 6, 12 months throughout this year, whether it is clients within my mastermind, whether it is clients who I'm meeting for the first time through my free experiences or simply connecting with in the DMs here. I'm such a people person. I love people. I love conversations. I love connecting. So that is my number one thing about my business. I think now and always connecting with you here on this platform in real life. I've had so many more in real life connections and opportunities this year, and that has been super wonderful. One fun thing that happened this year was I went viral twice, which was weird. And to the point where I remember one of my coaches coaching me on this. I was like, this is annoying. Like I kept getting all of these notifications and I was like annoyed. And so one of my reels, if you go through my reels, you'll be able to see which ones. There was one that got over like 300,000 views and another one was like over 50,000 views. I think between the two, I got about, 20 new followers. So just so you know, you can go viral and it doesn't impact your business whatsoever. You can also have a really small following and you could also have really great income. Yeah. One of my clients who I spoke to on the podcast recently and that I've been speaking to on Instagram recently, she had a 5-figure launch for her first ever launch. And she's got about 170 people in her audience on Instagram. So it just goes to show that you don't need a big audience. You don't need a big, huge following. You need connection and people that you adore and you get to have relationships with. Okay, so that was pretty fun going viral, even though I did feel a bit annoyed. But anyway, there you go. All right, what else? I made money this year. This was a year when I was like, oh, okay. And I think as business owners, most of the time, we're just winging this because we are. Like we're making it up for ourselves. We don't have a boss to tell us what to do. We're choosing what we do. And I really let myself do that this year. Just honor what it is that I want, like walking my talk, letting myself do what I desire and having fun with it, enjoying the process, even the messy middle bits, even that like period of pivoting that, didn't feel so fun all the time. But I made money this year. I had every month this year was a multiple 4-figure month. So like between that $2,000 and $9,000 month. I even had 2 months that were 5-figure months. And the most fun was in May when I had a $12,000 day. Like that had never happened to me before. So that was super fun for me. My podcast, Buzzsprout told me that my podcast has grown 71% this year, which is very fun. Again, I'm also like, I don't know, is that good? I feel like any growth is good. But I'm like, okay, cool, I'll take it. Some other kind of stats was like my mailing list has grown. The average kind of open rate is about 35%. And if you're not a stats person, that's fine. That's pretty much all I've got for you stats-wise. It felt easy to call in clients this year. That felt really good for me. I know there was like periods in business this year where I wasn't particularly selling anything. I was happy where I was working with my clients. I had some space for 1 or 2 more clients. And sometimes I would get out there and sell when I felt inspired. Other times I was just really happy to just cruise along. And when I was ready to call in a new client, it felt like it happened really easily. It felt like almost the universe got the memo. And that has been such a big turning point for me in my business. So financially, where we're at now, the start of this financial year, so this kind of 5-6 months now, at the end of this year, I've made more money than I have in the whole past financial year of last year. And last year, that whole financial year, I made more than the 3 years together before that. So we're on the exponential tilt now, guys. You know how I've talked about before about incremental versus exponential growth? We're on the exponential growth path. We're kicking right up. So that's been super fun. I really want to make sure that anything I'm sharing, especially my financial wins, are transparent. So whilst I've talked about the gains from this year, I'll also share like expenses. So just briefly, this is a side note because I just thought about sharing this now. I set aside about 30% of my income for tax. I really only have maybe a couple $100 a month of expenses for subscriptions like Zoom and MailChimp and that kind of thing. I think the biggest expense for me this year was my new laptop. My old laptop died like a month out of warranty. I was like, no. The worst part was it had problems like a few weeks before that. If I'd gotten around to it sooner, I would have been fine. But anyway, so that was a $2,000 expense this year. And my like annual website fee was about $600. Other than that, I'm not sure that there was much else in terms of expenses. No, actually, I have been paying someone to do my podcast editing, as well as my audiobook editing and producing. And next year, I've already got my mentor for next year, Beck. She's incredible. And so we're kicking right off in January. I'm going to actually speak to soon. I'm going to share, because I know other people have asked, like, how do you choose a mentor? How do you choose a coach that's right for you? How do you know it's going to be worth it for you? I'll share a bit more about that, hopefully on another live and another episode. I'm not going to commit to anything yet because my holidays are about to start soon. So we'll see. I might get the inspired desire to share next week or the week after. I've got 3 weeks off, so let's see. So yeah, business coaching has actually been the biggest expense for me. I think so I'm looking at $9,000 for the first 6 months of next year. And as for this year, what I paid for this year was last year. So I paid in full last year to cover most of this year. And I think that's about it. So yeah, I've invested in coaching. I've invested in a new laptop. And yeah, that's pretty much it for expenses. I've gotten good at selling in a way that feels really good to me, that feels like it's my personal selling style, that feels authentic to me, that doesn't feel like I have to try and use any kind of fancy words or think about like buyer's psychology or come up with follow any particular formulas. I feel like I've just found my groove in selling. And that includes, when I'm talking about selling, I'm talking about like marketing. I'm talking about sharing what it is that I have to offer, whether that's a free offering or my one-on-one 9K client mentoring offering, or somewhere in between, the masterminds in between there as well. I have felt so good in selling. And I think what's really helped me with that is, well, number one, working with people that have been able to help me learn the skill of selling, because selling is a learnable skill. That is what I teach you in the mastermind. And you also learn about your own personal unique selling style. So yeah, I've really embodied more of that this year. What else do I want to share with you? Okay, yeah, this year, whilst I've always been someone to not shy away from letting myself find whatever that sparkly next thing is. What's the saying? Oh, I don't know. It's like the next sparkly thing, right? I've not shied away from that. I've let myself be creative. I've let myself follow my sparks of desire. But this year, I've felt so grounded in what my offerings are. And I'm no longer feeling like I'm throwing spaghetti at the walls. I'm like, oh, there's such clarity. There's such a groundedness. And I'm not sure if that's reflected back out towards you, but this year has felt just like really grounded and settled. And yeah, it's felt really good from that perspective. What else? Yeah, I've totally let myself walk my talk and do what I desire. And it has absolutely shown the results in which I promote. The more pleasure you have in your business, the more you do what it is you desire, the easier it is to dissolve the resistance. The less resistance you have, the easier it is, the more you want to talk about it and call people in. Like, I've had such fun in my business this year, just letting myself do what I want. I think with each year in my business, I've deconditioned myself from the employee that I was conditioned to be from a very young age. I have an older sister, and it was always like a joke in our household of she made me into a really great employee because she used to boss me around and tell me to go and get the sticky tape and all the rest of it. But yeah, I feel like with each year, and definitely this year, I've like really embodied the leader that I am in my business and in my life, and allowed myself to do exactly what I want in my business. So sometimes that has looked like just, starting and finishing programs at a time that suits me in terms of timing in the year. Other times that's looked like thinking that I need to offer like a multi 5-day masterclass and then going, you know what, I actually just want to offer 10 days of bite-sized trainings in Telegram. And that's been my freebie experience. I've just let myself do what I want this year, and it's been really fun. It's been really fun, and it's allowed me to step into that leadership role of my business. My first mastermind launch. So this is my second round of the mastermind that I'm launching now. Doors are closing this Friday for this year. So if you want to get in there, send me a DM and let's talk about it. It looks like we've got our 4th person coming in. So that means we're 50% full already. We don't start until February. But my first mastermind launch at the start of this year was over a $10,000 launch. And that was so exciting for me. So that was definitely a high from this year. Yeah, and as I said, like now we're half full again for the second round. So again, super exciting. And okay, I think that's it in terms of what I've really enjoyed from this year, what has felt like the good in my business this year. Connection with you, glorious folk. Connection with my clients, getting to do the work that I do. We just finished up our last mastermind coaching call for the year. And I just was like so deeply honored and shared how privileged I feel to be able for this to be my work. It feels so good to me. And I'm filled with such gratitude for it. So that's a big piece. But yeah, just letting myself do what I want and having the results show for it, financially, but as well as like energetically, like I'm more energized than I ever have been in my business. That accounts for the no more babies, no more breastfeeding and no more pregnancies. But also when you're doing what fulfills you, when you're doing stuff that you enjoy, when you're doing what you desire, you require less capacity. Like you don't need as much fuel. You don't have to force yourself to do anything. So for me, it feels like in my business, I'm just floating downstream, working with amazing people as I go, looking at like beautiful scenery, catching the sun rays while I sun my boobies. Like that is what it has felt like this year in my business. What's next? More of this. I'm going to be working still one-on-one with incredible clients. I am going to be having my mastermind happening again. Again, we're starting in February. So that's what's going to be happening next year. But I'm also focusing on growing my podcast and growing my mailing list and doing more in real life connective type experiences. So that looks like facilitating at other people's retreats. And it's interesting that I wrote this down earlier and I got my first invitation just only an hour ago. Nothing set in stone yet. There we go. Nothing's set in stone yet. But for me, this is just like a cute little wink from the universe. Like it's already on the way. So yeah, more one-on-one clients, more mastermind time, focusing on growing my podcast and my mailing list and more in real life connections. And also speaking on podcasts. Like I love speaking on podcasts. And I know when I talk about my work, I create more work. When I speak about my business, I grow my business. And I love having connections with other people. So getting on more podcasts is definitely something that I want to achieve more of next year that I'm going to dive into more. But other than that, I forgot to mention. Also, I am starting to piece together I'm starting to piece together a structure for my next book. So I'm not giving myself a timeline for that at this point in time. So when I wrote my last book, I wrote most of it in about 3 months. And this time I'm just opening myself to plucking out little pieces as I go. That will go in there. And that piece could go in there. So I'm not going to share too much more about it because clearly it's not a super clear vision to provide for you yet. It is about pleasure in business. And yeah, I can't wait to get stuck into it. But yeah, that's me. That's my recap. So I've shared with you the good, the bad, and what's happening next year. All right, so I will be seeing you on the interwebs. Do let me know if you've got any questions, if you want me to clarify anything. Bye for now. That wraps up today's episode. But before I sign off, I want to let you know that doors to the next round of the Pleasurepreneur Mastermind are now open. You're listening to this podcast because you know you can have both, the income and the pleasure-filled life you desire, and the mastermind is where that becomes a reality for you. If you've decided 2025 is your year to create multiple four-figure months in your business whilst being able to enjoy your life, like savoring slow mornings, snuggling your babes in bed, spending quality time with your family, or doing things that you enjoy outside of your business as well as in, you're going to love and totally transform yourself and your business inside the mastermind. It's my 5-month group coaching experience where we apply the key pleasurepreneur principles and strategies that actually move the needle to create multiple four-figure months so that you save your time, your energy, and your presence for where it counts. The mastermind is where you learn how to grow your income, sign more clients, help more people, and create a life that feels outrageously delicious and pleasure-filled for you. It's also the place where you're celebrated, supported, and witnessed by an intimate group of women who get it. You can apply right away by clicking the link in the show notes, or if you're curious and you want to learn more, send me a DM on Instagram and let's have a chat. You can also head to reganfig.com/mastermind or click the link in the show notes. But then I don't get to hear all about you and your business goals and desires for next year, which would be a bummer for me. But you follow what you desire. And if you have any questions, of course, send them my way. We don't begin officially until February, but the sooner you join, the more bonuses you'll get, such as coaching with me this side of the new year. Because it's an intimate group with only a maximum of 8 women inside, be sure to make yourself known to me sooner rather than later as spaces are limited. All right, that's it from me. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye for now.